The Imperium endures because of a single unyielding fact. The Emperor endures, safeguarding humanity from harm. Yet I uncovered evidence that he perished millennia ago, his essence scattered into the warp eons past. Once I exposed this reality, entire planets ignited in chaos, and the pillars of faith crumbled in an instant. Now, humanity confronts an unthinkable dilemma it was never ready for. What becomes of us when we learn our deity has vanished? I stood witness as this revelation fractured the Imperium, as the gilded deception that had propped up mankind for 10,000 years splintered like fragile crystal under the crush of irrefutable insight. I am Inquisitor Odin Vale of the Ordo Hereticus, the one who extinguished all hope. It's a bitter twist that I've chased truth relentlessly throughout my existence, ferreting out heretics who corrupted sacred teachings, eradicating sects that murmured of rival deities, scorching entire spheres to quarantine taint, all devoted to what I swore was the sacred decree of the God Emperor. In the end, though, it fell to me to demonstrate that no divine guardian oversees our fate. The initial clues emerged amid a standard psychic probe of a detained navigator from House Belisarius. This individual, a female called Aura, had been caught sending encrypted signals to a notorious heretical group active in the segmentum solar. As the mind-probing unfolded, our approved psyker detected odd disruptions, a rhythm echoing from the warp not originating in the navigator, but from Terra itself. I initially brushed it off as a protective ruse, perhaps a mental snare set by an adept's disciplined psyche. But when identical anomalies surfaced in 3 additional sessions, I realized a deeper anomaly was at play. No matter the captive's offenses or background, every exposed mind bore that same ethereal signature, one that traced back to the seat of sanctity, to the golden throne. A chilling apprehension gripped me the moment I grasped the ramifications. I convinced myself it couldn't be, that I was chasing illusions, that this probe would uncover only my mounting suspicions. How mistaken I proved. I secured a vessel, an aging dictator-class cruiser named the Undaunted Truth, a moniker that would turn eerily prescient beyond my wildest foresight. Accompanied by a handful of loyal followers, I set a bearing for Terra, leveraging my inquisitorial mandate to skirt the standard century-spanning queues for orbital clearance. Even the Inquisition finds access to Terra no easy feat. The bastion of mankind bristles with the galaxy's fiercest safeguards, tiered armadas of warships, void stations, and esoteric barriers. 3 days into transit, my steadfast acolyte Marithor Kane entered my private sanctum. He'd stood by me for 22 years, once an Arbit's enforcer whose devotion to righteousness had outgrown the Empire's inflexible codes. His features were taut, his cybernetic eye, implanted following our Phobos operation, whirring faintly as it calibrated to the subdued glow of my quarters. "Lord," he murmured, though we were solitary, "I need to inquire about the purpose of our mission. Whispers among the crew suggest we're seeking proof against the Emperor." I studied him intently. Kane had always accepted orders without probe, requesting details only as required for his role. His voicing doubts now revealed the swelling unease rippling through the ship. "We're after the facts, Kane," I assured him. "No more, no less. That's our holy obligation as throne devotees." His natural eye tightened while the mechanical one held steady, impassive. "And should those facts prove hazardous?" "Every truth carries risk," I countered, "hence the need for oversight, hence our purpose as inquisitors." He appeared unconvinced, yet inclined his head and departed. I ought to have heeded the alerts, recognized that my inner circle could waver if they divined the inquiry's core. But obsession with the unknown gripped me, fueling a dire hunch in my thoughts. We arrived in the Sol system after 3 months, by which point the anomaly intensified. Our astropath, Malia, started enduring bloody noses and convulsions as we drew nearer. She described it as an anguished wail elongated over 10,000 years, finally waning toward quiet. One evening, I discovered her in the vessel's modest shrine, not in devotion, as one might anticipate, but motionless, gaze fixed on the ornate aquila adorning the bulkhead. Her milky eyes, altered by the warp-touched gifts revealed in her youth, shifted to me upon my approach. "You must halt this course, Inquisitor," she stated bluntly. "Certain secrets aren't for mortal eyes. Certain thresholds aren't for crossing." "That's beyond our judgment," I responded, settling onto the rigid pew next to her. "If the Astronomicon falters, if the Emperor's astral signal weakens, it's incumbent on us to expose it." She emitted a laugh, a rare, hollow echo from one so withdrawn. It caught me off guard. A defect. "Is that how you interpret what we're perceiving?" "No, my lord, not a defect, an emptiness, a gap where his essence used to reside." Her statement sent a shiver through me, yet I pushed forward. "What are you saying, Malia?" She directed her sightless gaze at me, and I could almost sense her peering straight into my core, beyond it. "I'm saying that what we're picking up isn't the Emperor's aura shifting or diminishing. We're detecting the void left by his aura, now gone, like a mark in the dunes gradually washed away by the waves. Even at that moment, I clung to faith. I convinced myself we were picking up on some fresh expression of the Emperor's might, maybe a response to rising chaos energies, or an indication of his holy intent revealing itself differently. I was eager to accept any explanation, except the reality. When we arrived at Terra, I called upon exceptional privileges to gain access to the Imperial Palace. That process alone demanded weeks of navigating red tape, pulling strings with cardinal hexes from the Ecclesiarchy and Lord Inquisitor Vaughn. In the meantime, I had to billet my entourage in one of the myriad orbital habitats swarming Terra's orbit. Those habitats were vast urban sprawls on their own, sheltering millions of lives that would begin and end without ever touching the hallowed ground of mankind's origin world. It was aboard one of them, Sentinel Primus, that we first glimpsed the disturbances destined to engulf the entire Imperium. A small cult had sprouted among the habitat's upkeep crew, promoting the blasphemous idea that the Emperor's radiance was dimming, his strength ebbing, and that mankind needed to brace for an era of shadow. In ordinary times, I would have eradicated them swiftly, summoning the habitat's enforcers to gather the blasphemers for questioning and termination. But something held me back. Their doctrines, couched in the crude terms of the ignorant, mirrored far too closely the anomaly we'd observed. They described visions of the Golden Throne deserted, murmurs carried on the habitat's filtered atmosphere, claiming their deity had vanished. I ordered one of the cult's key figures brought to my chambers, a woman called Sir, formerly a routine bureaucrat before succumbing to apostasy. She displayed no terror as my followers escorted her in, just an odd, peaceful resignation. Quote 11. She stated before I could start my probe. Quote 12. Quote 13. I pressed, brushing aside her eerily spot-on reading of my intentions. Quote 14. She answered steadily. Quote 15. Quote 16. I inquired, my fingers on the grip of my power sword, poised to strike at any hint of warp taint, her stare locked with mine unflinchingly. Quote 17. Her declaration rang with supreme heresy, but it matched exactly the hints our probe had started to uncover. I had her confined rather than killed, intending deeper interrogation once we'd seen the palace. A choice I'd come to rue as the uprisings ignited. At last, we secured clearance to set up a surveillance outpost in a lesser tower of the Sanctum Imperialis, still kilometers from the Golden Throne, yet nearer than most Imperium devotees would ever draw to the Emperor's corporeal shell. Our path to the allotted room wound us past security layers so thick and suspicious they'd seem absurd elsewhere. Eye scans, genetic verification, mind scans, truth drug sessions, and scrutiny by tech priests equipped with cybernetics tailored to spot lies or corruption. At every barrier, I flashed my inquisitorial seal, claimed my rank's power, and endured their checks with what patience I could summon. By the time we arrived at our spot, even Cain, ever the picture of calm, betrayed hints of weariness. "This spot doesn't sit right, my lord," he murmured once we were sealed in the cramped, grimy room that would serve as our hub. Not wholly like I pictured the Imperial Palace, just off somehow. I understood his point. The atmosphere carried a weight, a whiff of rot that no rituals or unguents could conceal. The halls we'd traversed were awe-inspiring. The chamber, needless to say, was adorned with craftsmanship that surpassed anything our current era could produce. Yet, hidden under that splendor, lurked a sense of emptiness, like strolling amid the mummified remains of a long-extinct society instead of its vibrant core. Our room was bare bones, yet practical, fitted with cogitators and psychic amplification devices positioned just as I had requested. It had obviously been quickly adapted for our purposes. Datapads and mechanical parts piled messily in the corners, a fine layer of dust-blanketing areas that ought to have been spotless in such a holy site. It was in this overlooked nook of humanity's holiest edifice that we started to decode the reality. Our astropath connected to the gear, and for the initial occasion, we managed to extract the pattern for direct examination, free from the warped filter of an inmate's psyche. The ordeal was excruciating for Malia. As she interfaced with the psychic array, her frame seized up, crimson trickling from her nostrils and ears. She let out a cry that reverberated unnaturally long in the tight confines of our space. Kane stepped forward to sever the link, but I held him back. We had to understand. We had to witness her vision. "The Emperor," she wheezed, her words faint. "He's visible, yet absent. The golden throne appears, but it's vacant. The Astronomican's glow is there, but it's not his. It scorches, O throne, the agony of it." Her speech grew more disjointed, yet the information surging via the cogitators was utterly precise. Our revelation shattered every doctrine I'd ever absorbed. The pattern wasn't a message. It wasn't an order, a boon, or a sign of godly intent. It was a lack, a chasm, a hollow imprint where a colossal entity had once resided but had since vanished. Picture a massive rock plunging into a calm lake. The rock may sink from sight, but its waves radiate out, betraying its impact. What we traced were the echoes of the Emperor's essence slipping into the warp. Not in some abrupt disaster, not lately, but incrementally, over millennia, until scarcely a trace lingered. I resisted the notion initially. I ordered the apparatus taken apart and reassembled. I summoned 3 additional astropaths to verify Malia's observations. I expended vast sums in supplies and influence to gain entry to archaic surveillance outposts that had tracked psychic emanations near the throne across ages. The evidence was irrefutable. The psychic essence embodying the Emperor of mankind, the deity I'd devoted my life to, had been fading for thousands of years. What lingered atop the golden throne was barely a shell, a cadaver around which mankind's grandest deception had been constructed. The Emperor was deceased. He might have been genuinely gone since his clash with Horus. The Astronomican's psychic signal, the navigational beacon enabling warp navigation, wasn't fueled by his sacred power, but by the daily immolation of countless psychers. Their spirits consumed like kindling to sustain the pretense that he still oversaw us. In those grim moments of revelation, I watched my team start to splinter. Kane stayed true, his expression stern yet steadfast. "If that's the reality," he stated, "it alters none of our obligations. We protect humanity, divine oversight or none." But not everyone held firm. My deputy acolyte, Don Reth, once a savant of the Adeptus Mechanicus who'd aligned with the Inquisition after exposing blasphemous tech rites on his forge world, came to me with quivering fingers and terror-stricken gaze. "This defies reason, my lord," he uttered, his tone cracking. "The Omnissiah can't have departed. The machine god and the Emperor are unified. If one is hollowed out, what fate awaits the other?" I offered no reply. Our findings' ramifications stretched well past issues of belief. The Imperium's whole framework, its rule, its forces, its trade, hinged on faith in the Emperor's godhood and safeguarding. Should that faith crumble, what would endure? I ought to have erased the proof. I should have slain my followers and myself, sealing the mystery in death. That would have been the kinder path. But as an inquisitor, I'd vowed to expose the facts, however horrific. And in my arrogance, my disbelief, my urge to validate the horror I'd unearthed, I committed the irredeemable act. I sent the proof to a gathering of inquisitors, complete with my analysis. I anticipated arguments. I foresaw rejection. What I never foresaw was the interception of my broadcast. Even now, I remain ignorant of who first breached our files. Maybe a tech priest overseeing transmissions, maybe a subversive faction inside the Inquisition. All that's certain is that mere hours later, the knowledge had started to disseminate. First, it began as a murmur, soon swelling into an unstoppable torrent that no force from the Inquisition could hope to dam. We were in our private quarters when the initial dispatches arrived, disturbances among the populace in the districts closest to the palace. Arbeit squads deploying to quell what officials labeled a widespread fit of madness. Cobb burst into my room unannounced, his features drained of color. "My lord, we must depart immediately." He extended a data slate for my inspection. The screen displayed grainy footage from a surveillance link, capturing throngs pouring through the avenues of one of Terror's myriad hive spires. They were shouting in unison, the sound garbled beyond recognition. Yet the atmosphere screamed of frenzied aggression. Quote 21. I inquired, even as dread confirmed my suspicions deep within. Kane hesitated, then forced the words out. Quote 22. The impact struck like lightning, triggering utter ruin. Belief forms the bedrock of the Imperium, not machinery, not armed strength, but the collective conviction in the Emperor's godhood and safeguarding presence. Once that conviction shattered beyond repair, the fallout proved more ruinous than any foe from without could devise. We scarcely escaped to our vessel. The palace hallways, formerly a model of strict oversight and precision, had collapsed into pandemonium. Sentries meant to embody unwavering devotion and ironclad obedience were deserting their stations or, worse still, assaulting their commanders. Palace staff from the endless bureaucratic offices were either bolting in terror or banding into hysterical groups, clamoring for confirmation of the dreadful rumor. I witnessed an ecclesiarchy cardinal dismembered by his personal guards. I beheld tech priests demolishing holy cogitators with their own mechanical limbs, yanking free their implants as though their very existence now repulsed them. I observed horrors unthinkable at the core of mankind's dominion, the nexus of its creed and rule. Upon arriving at our craft, we discovered Malia and two fellow astropaths lifeless in the shuttle dock, their forms twisted in evident torment from their last breaths, their visages locked in sheer horror, psychic cowls fractured as if clawed away in frantic agony. Quote 23. Wrath murmured, his complexion ghostly white as he surveyed the corpses. Quote 24. From our vantage in orbit, I observed the inaugural uprisings erupt across Terror's face. The Adeptus Arbits countered with their signature ruthless precision, yet they soon found themselves swamped. When the ecclesiarchs sought to brand the news as blasphemy, their declarations fell flat. The root of their power stood exposed as illusion. In mere days, the turmoil leaped to adjacent sectors. The Astronomicon wavered as its sustaining psychers, many hailing from the devout, refused to offer their lives for a husk they now recognized as such. Navigation through the warp grew perilously erratic, stranding worlds apart at the precise moment solidarity was essential. High above, we watched the surges of bloodshed ripple over Terror's crust like a plague. Whole hive metropolises blazed, the infernos glaring from afar, even in the void. Spaceward batteries winked out sequentially, manned by crews slain, vanished, or pledged to fresh allegiances. Imperial Navy flotillas fractured their lines, some shielding merchant craft while others trained lances on old allies. A vox from Lord Inquisitor Vaughn came through, his countenance worn thin and tone raw from endless cries. Quote 25. The bitter twist of his oath wasn't lost on me. I uncovered the reality, my lord, fulfilling my obligation. His chuckle rang hollow and fractured. Your obligation was to shield the Imperium, not dismantle it. Do you grasp the nightmare unfolding below? The custodes have barricaded the palace's innermost vaults. They're putting down any who draw near, even senior administratum officials. The Mechanicus envoys on Terror have proclaimed the Omnissiah perished and the Martian Pact dissolved. Half the world's shield network lies dormant, and whispers abound of chaos sects rising in every underhive, ensnaring hordes of the lost, grasping for any deity that might heed their pleas. I had nothing to offer in reply. What words could absolve the cataclysm I'd unwittingly set loose? Quote 28. The Omnissiah is dead. Quote 29. The fusion of organic and mechanical has proven inadequate. We shall ascend to godhood on our own, refining our structures past the imperfect ideals of the false omnissiah. Mars summons every devoted follower of the machine god to reject the Imperium's bonds and adopt the exalted mechanicum. The feed severed suddenly, supplanted by a fresh broadcast. This came from a tech priest whose enhancements appeared more restrained, nearly hidden under his scarlet robes. This is Archmagos Delphin Grus, addressing all faithful adherents of the Omnissiah. Ignore any signals from the heretic Kelbor Hal. The Omnissiah's corporeal shell endures upon the golden throne. Even if his mind has progressed beyond mortal comprehension, his revered container demands protection. Mars stands firm in allegiance to Terra and the authentic mechanicum. All devotees of the Omnissiah are commanded forthwith to guard the holy forges from the transcendent apostasy. Quote 31. The imperial fists prepare to safeguard the palace as we have done eternally. Quote 32. The revelation regarding the emperor's condition alters none of our obligations. The custodian's retort chilled with exactitude, like a machine's decree. Your aid is unnecessary, Chapter Master. The imperial palace falls under the custodian guard's purview. We seek neither need nor your intervention. Quote 34. With all due honor, Shield Captain, conditions on Terra worsen by the hour. The palace's outer wards face assaults from rioters and coordinated cultist bands. My chapter is poised to form a bulwark line, easing the strain on your ranks and enabling concentration on the core shrines. A lengthy silence followed before the custodian answered. The Emperor's bodily presence abides on the golden throne, Chapter Master. While that endures, the custodian guard will uphold our timeless vow to shield him. Should the Astartes seek to demonstrate fealty, they must uphold stability across the broader Imperium and halt this plague of uncertainty from proliferating. Quote 36. The warp churns with unrest, my lord. Quote 37. These records precede the heresy. Quote 38. Certain ones even antedate the Great Crusade. They hold insights judged too perilous or too hallowed for broad dissemination, even among the Mechanicus elite. Quote 39. They're obliterating the vaults, Reth uttered, his words laced with dread. They'd rather entomb the truths than face how they challenge their doctrines. Quote 41. A presence stirs in the warp. Quote 42. Enormous and aureate. I sense not whether it pursues or shepherds us, but it perceives. Quote 43. Perceives unlike any warp hunter before. Quote 44. Inquisitor Vale. Quote 45. News of your finding has arrived here as well. Quote 46. You are aware. Quote 47. We sustain links with select factions within the Inquisition. Quote 48. Indeed, moreover, we possess our methods for detecting upheavals in the warp. The psychic ripple from crumbling belief has resonated with every psycher-sensitive warrior in our ranks. Quote 49. Take a place. Your journey has been lengthy and perilous. Quote 50. Then you grasp the ramifications of what I've uncovered, likely more thoroughly than you realize, Orkhan stated. The Emperor's godhood, or its absence, has never formed the core of our chapter's mission. Our founding aimed to defy the ruinous powers, those authentic deities intent on humanity's annihilation. That obligation endures, irrespective of the Emperor's actual essence. His declaration left me reeling. Amid the core of one of the Imperium's most clandestine and supreme units stood a commander wholly unmoved by the disclosure that had unraveled regimes and ignited galactic strife. You do not revere the Emperor as divine, I inquired. Orkhan's face stayed stoic. We pay tribute to him as our chapter's founder, as humanity's paramount psyker, and as the entity whose devotion has restrained chaos's onslaught for 10 millennia. Yet, adoration, no. Our deep insight into the warp and its inhabitants prevents us from confusing any figure, however mighty, with a genuine god. Quote 55. But the Imperium fractures under the strain. Quote 56. devoid of the shared conviction in the Emperor's sacred safeguard. Without the Astronomican to steer our vessels, human society faces ruin. Oricon's demeanor held steady. Conceivably, or from the ruins, a fresh paradigm might arise, more truthful, more enduring. He stood and approached a window overlooking Titan's barren terrain. What troubles me greater is not the demise of an illusory deity, but the threat of authentic ones ascending. As devotion to the Emperor wanes, people will turn to novel idols. The ruinous powers await eagerly to claim them. A shiver ran through me at his insight. Absorbed by the instant fallout from my revelation, I had scarcely pondered the enduring effects on mankind's spirit. If the Emperor truly warded off chaos via humanity's unified belief, what fate awaited now that such belief lay in fragments? We already note surges in chaos cult operations spanning numerous sectors, Oricon went on. Planets stable for ages now witness widespread shifts to venerating the dark entities. The divide between real space and the warp thins. Demonic breaches multiply, growing bolder and stronger. So what course lies ahead? I pressed. How endures humanity through this? Oricon faced me once more, his gaze mirroring the icy gleam of far-off stars. That, Inquisitor Vale, is the matter we've convened to confront. You're far from alone in seeking sanctuary here. Envoys from diverse imperial bodies have journeyed to Titan these past weeks. The Inquisition, the Administratum, and even ecclesiarchy factions prioritizing endurance over dogma. He guided me from the room along extended halls of gleaming rock. Servitors and chapter serfs bustled with intent, betraying none of the dread or disarray afflicting other imperial bodies. The fortress monastery's rigor held firm, a modest bastion of stability amid a cosmos plunging into turmoil. We traversed areas where Grey Knights readied themselves in assorted ways. Some refined their fighting prowess in training rings, their actions blurring beyond my mortal sight. Others contemplated in spaces fortified with psychic nullifiers, their thoughts barricaded from the warp's evident frenzy. Tech Marines toiled over Terminator harnesses, etching fresh protections and bolstering prior ones against the escalating chaos threats. The chapter gears for conflict, I remarked. Oricon inclined his head. A war unlike any prior. Not versus one foe on one battlefield, but throughout the Imperium, clashing with chaos's might, invigorated by mankind's spiritual turmoil. We stepped into a vast circular hall, centered by a circular table of B. The chamber's heart was a vast obsidian slab, devoid of any marble sheen. Encircling it sat the remnants of the Empire's ruling elite. I spotted familiar inquisitors among them, such as Lord Inquisitor Vaughn, the one who'd facilitated my entry to Terra. Delegates from the Administratum, the Ecclesiarchy, and even a solitary Techmagos occupied seats, his mechadendrites jerking with unease, separate from the group. Oricon gestured toward an unoccupied chair. Take your position among us, Inquisitor Vale. You've secured your spot here, come what may. As I settled in, their stares pressed down on me like an invisible force. A few carried outright enmity, others mere intrigue. Yet, everyone weighed heavy with the grim awareness of the Imperium's unraveling, the realm they'd devoted their existences to upholding. The debates that ensued stretched across several days. Updates poured in from galactic frontiers, each grimmer than its predecessor. The Imperium splintered along old fissures and spawned fresh ones by the hour. The Astronomican's collapse left innumerable vessels lost in the warp, while survivors materialized years or decades astray. Their personnel, warped by prolonged contact with the Immaterium absent Terra's beaconing glow, descended into insanity. Worldly governors proclaimed sovereignty. Warrior lords proclaimed themselves monarchs. Hidden chaos sects surfaced, bolstering their followers with the bitter and the hopeless. The Adeptus Mechanicus schism engulfed every Forge world, some sects striving to forge a successor machine deity in the Emperor's stead, while others bowed to the Void Dragon, a Cetan shard, whispered to languish captive on Mars. Yet amid the litany of ruin and upheaval, sparks of defiance flickered. Space Marine brotherhoods erected barriers around vital star systems. Imperial Guard units held their ground against uprisings and demonic assaults alike. inquisitorial gatherings forged fleeting pacts with local militias to enforce stability. It appeared humanity refused to fade soundlessly into oblivion. By the third day of these councils, Grandmaster Oricon demanded hush. The room, alive with clashing pleas from Empire envoys over supplies and urgencies, hushed at once. "We've dwelled long enough on the ailment's symptoms," he declared. "The hour has come to devise remedies, or, at minimum, chart ways to alleviate the worst pains." Lord Inquisitor Vaughn, a skeletal figure etched with marks from endless clashes against mankind's foes, responded initially. "Concealing the facts serves no purpose. Dismissing Inquisitor Vale's findings would merely fuel suspicions of deeper lies. We owe it to confront the Emperor's true state head-on, and then supplant devotion to the Emperor with what precisely?" pressed Cardinal Olga Chireno from the ecclesiarchy, her tone laced with fury. "Devotion alone has bound the Imperium across 10,000 years. Absent that, what's left?" "Devotion to our own kind," I ventured, breaking my silence for the first time there. Every gaze fixed upon me. The Emperor, beyond all else, embodied humanity's loftiest achievements. Devoid of divinity, he stood as the finest mortal in history, one who'd yielded all to shield our race from alien horrors and warp abominations alike. Rising, I addressed the assembly with mounting assurance. For ages we've venerated a figure who, by every record, spurned such idolatry, envisioning instead a rational human dominion forged in logic, not myth. In shedding this illusory deity, we might seize the chance to revive that lost ideal. The tech priest, named Xerxes, belonging to the Logos Historica Veritas, a sect committed to safeguarding authentic lore over blind creed, signaled approval with a nod. Archives unearthed from Mars align with this view. The Emperor aimed to liberate mankind from faith's chains, uplifting us via technology and intellect. "Fine rhetoric," Cardinal Chireno sneered. "Yet you can't swap out 10 millennia of belief for a call to logic in a single breath. The common folk need an anchor beyond their own limits, something transcendent." "Then anchor them to reality," Oricon murmured softly. "The cosmos holds terrors and marvels far beyond the narrow tenets of the imperial creed. The warp exists. Its inhabitants exist. The peril they bring to our species is undeniable. But humanity's endurance, its innovation, its valor, these endure as well." He laid his gauntleted palms upon the slab, the impact resounding through the space like a verdict's strike. "I advocate assembling a fresh alliance, not to resurrect the Imperium of old, that path lies barred, but to safeguard whatever endures, to fortify bastions of human society able to endure the looming tempest, to amass wisdom, assets, and guardians encircling thriving worlds that could outlast the trials ahead." "And who shall command this alliance?" Vaughn inquired. "Devoid of the Emperor, what grants legitimacy?" "Not any lone soul," Oricon countered. "A governing body, maybe one drawing from varied remnants of those groups dedicated to safeguarding humankind's endurance over personal dominance. The Space Marines, the steadfast segments of the Imperial Guard, the logical branches of the Mechanicus, the Inquisition, or whatever fragments persist that prioritize honesty, and the ecclesiarchy?" Cardinal Chireno inquired, her tone laced with strain. Oricon held her stare without wavering. The ones prepared to adjust their doctrines to this emerging truth. Indeed, belief can serve as a mighty ally for progress when it's not rooted in deception. The Emperor might not have qualified as a deity by conventional measures, but his devotion to humanity's cause was undeniable. His battle against the chaotic forces endures. Though his awareness has mostly scattered across the warp, a profound significance lingers there, a heritage deserving of reverence. The talks progressed, turning more tactical as time wore on. Strategies formed for relocating vital staff and assets from Terra prior to its unavoidable descent into disorder or something far graver. Rosters assembled of planets suitable as fresh hubs for human authority. The Grey Knights proposed Titan as a provisional base for the coalition, citing its telepathic barriers and remote setting as among the safest spots in the solar system. While we probed the logistics of rescuing salvageable elements from the crumbling, battle-ravaged Imperium, I grew ever more captivated by the incoming accounts of odd warp disturbances echoing from distant stars. Astropaths described sightings of a radiant glow traversing the immaterial realm. Navigators mentioned novel flows in the warp, configurations unseen in their experience. Space Marine librarians recounted communal visions of an entity neither mortal nor demonic, but wholly distinct. In a short break from the Council's debates, I neared one of the Grey Knight's librarians, a battle psyker called Hyperion, whose fame had even pierced my isolation. Legend spoke of his mental prowess rivaling the chapter's finest, his intellect wielded as fiercely as the power halberd at his side. You're curious about the warp. Quote 69. About the shifts unfolding there after your revelation. Quote 70. The warp has shifted. Quote 71. But not as one might anticipate. Fresh flows are emerging, novel configurations taking shape. An entity is gestating within, Inquisitor. An entity unprecedented in its form. Quote 72. Do you perceive it, this emerging force? Quote 73. Not outright, no, but its influences are evident. Regions of the warp formerly roiled now lie serene. Stalkers that once lured toward vessels like ours now scatter, repelled by a dread surpassing their ravenous urges. Quote 74. What might demons dread? Quote 75. Annihilation. Quote 76. The notion of their utter dissolution. Quote 77. The warp takes shape from cognition, Inquisitor. If sufficient humans embrace a force capable of dismantling the ruinous powers that embrace itself, forges a blade. Quote 78. It's leading the way, Ira murmured in one such moment. It's defending us, no matter its nature. It desires our triumph. The epistolary's declaration echoed in my thoughts. An emperor divinity. Not the husk upon the throne, but a fresh incarnation, one spawned from mankind's shared belief and determination. A warp being that, in contrast to the chaos powers, drew sustenance not from our deepest fears and angers, but from our aspirations, our bravery, our resolve to persevere. Was such an existence feasible? And, should it be, what implications did it hold for humankind's destiny? Did this novel force represent the Emperor's mind reborn? Or was it an altogether different phenomenon? Something that simply donned his likeness because that was the guise mortals anticipated for their Redeemer. As the Veritas bore us toward the initial of numerous planets that would shape humanity's course, I uttered something absent from my life for decades, not since pledging myself to the Inquisition's cause. A supplication not to the God Emperor as I had formerly conceived him, but to whatever essence lingered of the figure who had given all for humanity's endurance, to the lingering psychic resonance of his intent that could still be forming in the warp into a novel entity. Lead us, I breathed into the turbulent void outside the gala field, not as our ruler, but as our invention. Reveal to us the means of weathering the trials ahead. And deep within the Immaterium's expanse, where ideas and feelings solidify into reality, I almost sensed a reply, not voiced in language, but as an abrupt rush of direction, of insight piercing the disarray. The road forward stretched endlessly, riddled with perils. The galaxy would blaze, ancient truths would shatter, and myriad souls would perish amid the shift from the old order to potential renewal. Yet, humanity would persist, altered, wounded, maybe diminished to but a shadow of its past glory in population and domain. Still, it would press on, and within that persistence sprouted the potential for ultimate renewal, for a fresh grasp of our cosmic role and our ties to the forces beyond the shroud of existence. The Emperor had perished. Long live humanity.